Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to be talking about the Crysis 3 single player campaign. Now I'm not going to address multiplayer here really. I do enjoy the multiplayer and I'm going to be doing a lot of videos covering the multiplayer aspect of Crysis 3. Now between the first and second Crysis games there are some pretty big changes in how the gameplay played out in terms of the campaign. The first game took place on a tropical island where you literally had gigantic jungle-sized maps where you could forge your own trails and decide how you wanted to complete the mission. Your mission was to get from point A to point B. You could either go run and gun and take out an entire enemy base, or you could go very stealth, snipe a few guys, find your own way around the map and get through the map that way. This sandbox style freedom was something that really resonated with me and a lot of other players out there. Now when Crysis 2 came around, the story switched over to New York City, so you have tons of tall skyscrapers, streets, and the levels all of a sudden became much more linear. It wasn't so much, here's a big city, go play around in it, try and get from point A to point B and complete your mission. It was, here's a big city, but you're going to have to take a left on this street or right on this street, climb up into this building, jump over to that building. That's what you're supposed to do. It was very scripted throughout the entire campaign as well. There was a lot of sequences where dropships or cool cutscenes would happen because you were positioned in the exact right spot. A lot of time was spent on the campaign, but it felt very much like a shooter on rails in many ways. Crysis 3 is clearly trying to bring a little bit more of that Crysis 1 open world environment into the single player campaign. You're still fighting in New York 24 years after this big alien invasion and fight, so you're kind of in this destroyed New York with tons of overgrown areas, and it's a really cool, amazing looking environment. The graphics are without question the best looking visuals I have seen in any other first person shooter to date. Now the engine isn't quite as much of a leap as the first Crysis engine was. The first Crysis brought in all these visual effects that nobody thought you could do in real time, and everybody just went crazy about how amazing the game looked and that it melted your computer system and all this stuff. And if you set the Crysis 3 graphics settings on Ultra, it will definitely slow down your PC. I didn't notice a huge difference between Ultra and high settings, and I was able to play pretty well on high, although some of the graphics like rain effects and water really slowed down the system, so you would get inconsistent frame rates between more closed off close quarter levels and larger open environment levels. Early in the game you're given your high-tech bow and arrow, which has multiple kinds of ammunition, and it's clear that the single player is designed so that you have plenty of opportunities to make use of this bow. The cool thing about it is that you can maintain your cloak while firing the bow, so it's an excellent stealth weapon. It's also incredibly powerful, allowing you to one-shot pretty much most of your average opponents. Although the single player is still quite linear in terms of where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do next, some of the environments between point A and B are a little bit larger, and if you take the time to explore and use your visor, you will find some interesting little weapons or bits of info that you can collect around the map here and there. Now the visor is quite a powerful tool, something that I think might be a little bit too powerful. I mean, you already have a super suit that can absorb fire, can jump high, can cloak. Now you have a visor that can, aside from tagging enemies, which is something you could do in the original Crysis, but you can tag your enemies, so it's kind of like wall hacks in a sense. You can also hack into turrets remotely just by looking at them from a certain distance away. You can wirelessly interface with them, hack them, and then all of a sudden they'll fight for you. So hacking a turret from a distance will often cause it to shoot the bad guys that are guarding that turret or around it. It gives you alternate options to invade in certain environments, whether you want to go all out and just blow everything up and kill all the bad guys, or you can go stealth, hack some things, and watch some of the environment work in your favor. Now, in the trailers for Crysis 3, they show really intense action-packed scenes of you jumping around, switching to your bow, wasting guys, switching to a different gun, or picking up weapons, alternating between armor and stealth mode, moving around environments incredibly fast, and it really does look quite cool. However, I picked the harder difficulty game mode, not the hardest, but one from the top level of hard, and basically in this mode, if you get shot just a little without your armor on, you will die. One soldier sneaking up on you will kill you. In these game trailers, it shows you absorbing a lot of damage here and there, and you basically aren't able to replicate that kind of fighting style. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there who can, but on the harder game modes, it's basically going to be a stealth game all the way through. You really have to pick and choose your targets carefully, because if you wind up in the wrong situation, you're dead. And I did die a lot learning sort of the ins and outs of how the suit works and at what ranges guys will detect me and how much damage I can absorb. If you haven't played the single player yet, I would recommend picking perhaps the normal difficulty level so you can have a little bit more fun in your playstyle. Otherwise, be prepared to do a lot of sneaking around and using your stealth as much as possible. Now, sadly, the Crysis storylines have never been particularly engaging. It seems like most of the games have sort of been like advertisements for their engine, like saying, hey, look how good our game looks, look at all these cool cutscenes we can do with dialogue and character animation and all this stuff. Go buy our engine so you can make a game that has a good storyline. Now I'm going to get into the plot a bit, so if you don't want me to ruin the plot of Crysis 3, you might want to stop watching the video now. Now, Crysis 3 picks up where Crysis 2 left off, and that's the first mistake. I don't think anybody out there really remembers the Crysis 2 plot too well. It's very, very convoluted, hard to follow, and frankly, bad science fiction writing. Now I'm going to try and summarize all three Crysis game plots as fast as possible. The first Crysis, you go to the Lingshan Islands. There's aliens there, there's North Koreans also with power suits just like yours. You have to fight the North Koreans, you awaken the aliens, they flash freeze the island, they use all these freezing weapons on you, then they go out to your aircraft carrier, they destroy the aircraft carrier, but you destroy one of their ships, and then you sort of retreat, and the news is basically that other areas of the world have sort of opened up, and Ceph are coming out and attacking locations, and they sort of just leave you with that cliffhanger. Then you're supposed to play Crysis 2. There are a few expansions, but they're basically the same story told from a different perspective with a few bits of information here and there. In the second Crysis, you play a different Marine in New York City, and you somehow run into this character, Prophet, who was in the first game, who clearly had some sort of bigger meaning to the story, but you didn't know too much about it other than he was more involved with the biosuits and stuff like that. You figure out that the suits are actually built off of Ceph technology, which is weird because the Koreans also had the biosuits, so now you're wondering, did the Koreans already have the Ceph technology? Because it seemed in the first game like they were just figuring out what was going on, and they opened up the alien technology for the very first time. So you're not sure if they already had that Ceph technology or what, but it's clear that the US at least had it for a while, and that they've been experimenting with elite soldiers such as your character in the first game. So then Prophet in the second game kills himself because he's infected with a virus that the Ceph have made, and they're trying to kill off the human race. For some reason you're in New York because the Ceph want to attack New York, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But anyway, he kills himself to give you his biosuit because apparently it won't let go of him until he kills himself. So then you take his biosuit, but he's sort of got his DNA and memories and all that crap stored in the biosuit, so you get all these weird Prophet visions while you're playing the second game. Then you find out that one of the main scientists that was working with you is sort of in league with other people, and it's hard to see what's going on and who's your friend and who's your ally. You end up having to fight the Cell Soldiers, which are sort of a private organization that for some reason we hired to fight the Ceph in New York. It's not really clear. They're sort of undergoing research and all this stuff, but they have a huge amount of power and a huge amount of forces for some sort of privatized corporation. And it really doesn't make too much sense. But anyway, you get deemed as an enemy because they think you're infected with the virus, and so you spend half the game fighting these Cell Marines, and then, or not Marines, but Cell Mercenaries, and then you spend the other half fighting the actual aliens themselves. At some point, your suit sort of figures out how to synthesize some sort of antibody or something that's going to kill the virus. You manage to like inject it into one of the main veins of the big alien host ship in New York or something, and I guess it kills most of the Ceph in New York City. And then, big plot twist at the end, you sort of answer one of your radio transmissions as Prophet. Oh my god, so somehow Prophet's memories or whatever, the suit has sort of taken over you, and Prophet has become more than just the person he was. He's now integrated with the suit, and so now the soldier that got consumed by the suit is now sort of consumed by Prophet also. I don't know, it's confusing. You start the third game and you're playing as Prophet. Everybody calls you Prophet, you talk like Prophet, so the soldier from the second game seems to be completely gone, and now it's just Prophet running around in this suit, and you really have no idea what he looks like under the mask. So finally, Crysis 3, the third game, you start out, you've been captured by Cell, you get rescued by some of your old comrades from the first game. Psycho is the big character in the third game, and he's basically Jason Statham with more body mass. And I guess you hook up with this renegade group that's inside the Cell main area of operation in New York, and you understand that Cell's corrupt and evil and sort of in league with aliens somehow, and you need to take them out and destroy their main power source. So that's where you start out. And for some reason there's still a few Ceph aliens around the city, and I guess they're sort of cleaning them up, and Cell's sort of in charge of like just quarantining New York and, I don't know, revitalizing it or something. There's no real government involvement in this game. In fact, you get no bigger picture of what's going on with the rest of the world. Whether or not the second game killed all the Ceph around the world or what, it seems sort of like it. But for some reason, you're really geared at going and taking out these Cell guys. Then all of a sudden, after you take out their main power source in New York, because you're trying to kill Cell off for whatever reason, you figure out that, oh no, the Ceph are actually playing a much bigger picture, and that one of them is still alive, the Alpha Ceph. What a creative name there. So the big boss Honcho Ceph is still alive somewhere in New York, and that he's somehow integrated into the Cell power grid, blah blah blah. You destroy their power grid, it unleashes the Alpha Ceph. All of a sudden the Ceph start coming back out in much bigger force. They're a big hive mind. Prophet somehow integrated with them, because since the suit was developed from Ceph technology, it can interface with them, and now he's sort of fighting this hive mind battle and getting weird powers and all this pretty hokey mumbo jumbo stuff. At one point, Cell decides that they're going to sort of quote unquote nuke the city, although they're not going to nuke it, they're going to shoot it with a giant laser satellite, and it's going to destroy New York and get rid of whatever the Alpha Ceph or whoever's there, but they think it's going to somehow destroy the world also, or Cell doesn't, but you do, so your mission is to go take out this laser. I don't even know why you're concerned about trying to save New York in the first place. It's completely obliterated to begin with, so why not just wipe it off the face of the map and be done with it? So ultimately, your little ragtag group manages to turn off this laser system. Then the Ceph all of a sudden is like, oh wait, we wanted you to do that because it was the only thing that was preventing us from opening a giant portal to our main homeworld that was going to bring a giant fleet of Ceph into the world, invade, and take over the planet. So now your new mission is to destroy this wormhole thing that the Ceph are creating, and you know you're going to have to fight the Alpha Ceph, which is also a gigantic mechanical worm. If you've ever seen Transformers 3, that giant robot worm that's destroying New York City, yeah, he's the same thing as the Alpha Ceph for some weird reason. So you're going to try and shut down this thing by blowing up anti-air installations for some reason, and then there's a big earthquake. You end up underground in this weird tunnel network. You go down deep into the earth and miraculously find the source of the big wormhole generator. You fight the Alpha Ceph in this just ridiculous boss battle, and your suit gets all overcharged and blah blah blah. You're having visions, it gets really weird. Then you sort of kill the Alpha Ceph, but you don't shut down the wormhole. You get sucked into this wormhole generator, which launches you basically into orbit around the planet. You're then floating around the planet, and you're watching all the aliens come through the wormhole to Earth, and you basically realize that, oh, you failed, but one last ounce of strength, and you decide that, oh look, hey look, I'm floating close enough to that big laser satellite that we shut down from Earth like the previous mission. I'm gonna go just use my little suit jets to fly over to that, because apparently your mechanical suit now has the ability to fly through space. You get onto the satellite, interface with it, use your little suit jets to point it at the wormhole, zap it, and blow it up. But wait, that's not the best part. Then, after you blow it up, you somehow sort of fall back through the atmosphere to the planet Earth. Man, this suit that you have is amazing. And I guess at this point, you're not really human anymore. You're sort of this weird nanite interface with the suit. At the end of the game, Prophet comes walking out of this little hut on the beach, but he's not in his suit anymore. He resembles the character Prophet as he was in the original game, but he's made out of nanites or something. He has become the suit, and the suit can now become anything, and it makes no sense at all, and it just hurts my brain, and I wanted to hit my head against the table so many times while playing this game. The story is just bad. It's so bad. It's really, really, really bad. And I was hoping the only way that the single player would actually be better is if they just allowed you to sort of ignore the overall plot and just be like, alright, I'm fighting aliens, I'm gonna shoot aliens, there's gonna be a big alien at the end, I have to kill it, and that'll be that, and I can just have a fun little action game. But they force you into all these cutscenes, long, drawn-out cutscenes with all this overly dramatic stuff going on where people die, characters you're supposed to care about, that you don't because the character development is terrible and super cliche. So you're forced to watch all these little nuances of this horrible story. You can't just skip through it. And that's really the worst part about the whole experience. Now, regardless of how bad that storyline is and how uninteresting all the characters and some of the missions are, I still recommend playing the single player simply because you're not going to see another game that looks as good as this one. There will be scenes in this game that you're just going to be like, oh my god, that's amazing. I can't believe they put so much time and effort into making this world look so authentic. You will run into a few bugs here and there. I recommend avoiding as many of the vehicle sequences as possible. You're going to be forced to get into a dune buggy here and there. You might even run into an APC. They're really buggy. I remember driving an APC off of like a 5-foot ledge and the whole thing just exploded on me randomly. They'll bug out, they'll glitch out, you'll get killed while in a vehicle for weird reasons. So the infantry combat is really well polished and refined. The interface is refined. Everything about the game actually looks like it did get a good amount of polish and wasn't rushed out the door. But the vehicle aspects of it are just really bad. It seems like they're just trying to show you that, hey, you can also do vehicles in our engine, but you probably shouldn't. Now, if you're wondering whether or not to buy the game based on the single player experience, I would say it's probably not worthwhile just for the single player. But for the whole combined package of the multiplayer, which I haven't talked about here, it is absolutely worth it. I think the multiplayer aspect of Crysis 3 is freaking awesome. They did a really good job with it. So if you just look at it as a really good multiplayer game with amazing graphics, with a single player that also has amazing graphics and a meh storyline, then you're still getting a pretty good bang for your buck. That's it for this review of the Crysis 3 single player. Stay tuned for more multiplayer Crysis 3 coverage. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.